The wagon hadn't even stopped moving when the girl was yanked forward by the arm. She stumbled down, bare feet hitting dirt too dry to hold footprints. Her cheek was bruised. Her wrists were tied in front of her with coarse twine, and the man who shoved her down from the back didn't bother to look at her twice. He just spat near her boots and walked away, jingling coin in his hand like the matter was settled. A second man stood waiting near the post, broad-shouldered, dust on his collar.
Hat pullet low.
His name was Eli Danner, and he was paid to make her disappear. Not kill her, not that. Just take her. Deliver her across state lines, into another man's hands. She wasn't his concern. She was barely more than a package. But then she looked up, and nothing about what he was supposed to do seemed simple anymore. Her lips were cracked. Her chin trembled, but she didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't ask who he was or where they were going. She just stood there like she'd already lost everything and knew better than to hope again. He glanced once at the man who paid him, a sweaty foreman with a badge and a voice like gravel. "Get her gone," the man said. "I don't care where. Just don't bring her back." Then he turned and walked away. Eli looked back at the girl. She didn't move. But let's go back to where it all started. The heat had come early that year. Dust hung in the air like ash. Every breath you took felt like it stole something from you. Eli had ridden into Pike's Hollow 2 days earlier, just to trade for lumber and horseshoes. He didn't plan to stay long. Towns like this didn't welcome men like him. Half Comanche, scarred from war, with a face that made shopkeepers straighten up and reach for their ledgers. He didn't argue. He kept to himself, tied his horse outside the saloon and drank water from a tin mug, watching the quiet violence of a mining town where children played in the mud while their fathers carried rifles. It was after sundown when the sheriff's man approached him, offered silver and whispered details. Something about a problem girl. Said she was too much trouble to keep, not worth the cost to hang. Said it in the kind of tone that turned women into objects. Eli didn't ask questions. He'd done worse jobs before. He'd taken coin for blood, for silence, for keeping things buried. The pay was more than fair, and the job was clear. Until this morning, until she looked at him. Now, standing in the yard outside the sheriff's back barn, Eli hesitated. The girl still hadn't moved. The sun climbed higher, lighting up the bruises under her eyes. She had that look children get when they've gone too long without comfort, like they've folded themselves up to fit inside something smaller than a body. He unhitched his horse, stepped forward. "You got a name?" he asked. She blinked once, then slowly shook her head. "You can't talk?" he asked, quieter. No answer. Her hands were trembling, even though the heat pressed down like iron. Her dress, if you could call it that, was torn in 2 places and stained with something old and brown. She couldn't have been more than 17. Eli let out a long breath and glanced back toward the sheriff's office. No one was watching. He reached for her rope. She flinched before she even saw what he was doing. "Easy," he muttered. "Ain't gonna hurt you." His knife flicked the twine apart. She looked down at her freed hands like she didn't know what to do with them anymore. Then he did the thing he wasn't paid to do. He bent down, reached beneath her knees, and lifted her into his arms. She didn't resist. She didn't understand. He carried her to the wagon like she weighed nothing, like she wasn't trouble, like she wasn't property, like she was a bride. And somewhere behind him, a saloon door swung shut and a man's voice muttered, "Ain't no use saving what don't want to be saved." But Eli didn't look back. He laid her gently in the back of the wagon, shaded her face with a folded tarp, then climbed up and flicked the reins. The town faded behind them. Neither of them spoke for miles. But the wind picked up, and in the far distance, behind the pines, a shadow moved. One that had been waiting for this girl to vanish, and wasn't ready to let go. The girl hadn't spoken a word since they left Pike's Hollow. She sat curled in the wagon bed, legs pulled to her chest, eyes tracking the treetops like she was waiting for something to leap out. Eli had offered her water twice. She'd taken it without meeting his eyes. The sky was shifting by the time they made camp. A red dusk blooming over the ridge, wind carrying the scent of sage and old firewood. Eli set up a small fire just off the trail, far enough from the wagon to give her space. He cooked beans, laid jerky near the coals. Didn't press her. When he turned back, she was still in the wagon, clutching the tarp like it was a blanket. Her eyes gleamed in the firelight, not with tears, but with the dry ache of someone who'd forgotten what softness felt like. Eli walked over and set the tin plate on the wagon floor. "You don't gotta talk," he said quietly, "but you do gotta eat." He waited a moment, then turned back to the fire. Minutes passed. Then the sound of tin scraping wood. She was eating. He didn't smile, didn't relax, because he'd made a choice today. And it wasn't the kind of choice you walked away from without consequence. The next morning, they passed a small ranch. Not much, a windmill, 2 pigs, one tired woman feeding chickens. She looked up at Eli's wagon and frowned. Didn't wave. Didn't need to. News would travel. It always did. They stopped at a creek just past noon. The girl stepped down on her own this time, slow and cautious. Eli sat nearby, whittling a piece of cedar, giving her the illusion of privacy. That's when he saw it. On her back, just beneath the shoulder, above the line of her dress, a faint branded mark. He'd seen brands like it before, on horses, on stolen livestock, but never on a person. Twisted his gut. The girl noticed him looking and pulled the fabric up higher without a word. That night, she slept on the blanket near the fire, not in the wagon. Not close, but not far either. 2 days later, they crossed paths with a ranch hand headed north. Young guy, dusty vest, chewed straw like it was tobacco. "You Eli Danner?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. Eli tensed. "Depends who's the skin. Name's Wade. Came outta Burnt Ridge. Sheriff there says you picked up a girl weren't yours." Eli's jaw shifted. Wade spat in the dirt. "Says she was property. Belonged to some mining foreman who paid good money for her." Eli said nothing. Wade looked past him, to the girl sitting in the wagon, hands folded tight in her lap. "She's why they branded her," Wade muttered. "Said she ran once. Said if she ran again, they'd cut her tongue out." Still, Eli said nothing. "You plan on giving her back?" Wade asked, voice lowering. Eli finally looked up. His eyes were quiet, cold. "I was paid to move her," he said. "That's what I did." Wade studied him, then chuckled low. "Yeah, I heard what you did." He glanced again at the girl. "You carry her like that again in front of the wrong man, you're gonna wake up with a rope round your neck." He tipped his hat, turned his horse, and rode off. Eli didn't move for a long time. Neither did the girl. But that night, as they camped again under an open sky, she edged just a little closer to the fire. And after a long silence, she spoke. "Marla." Eli looked up. She didn't repeat it. She didn't have to. It was her name. And suddenly, she was no longer a task. No longer a burden. No longer the girl. She was Marla. And now she had to be protected. Even if the whole county thought otherwise. The rain came without warning. It rolled down from the northern cliffs like a curtain pulled too fast. Wind first, then water in thick, cold sheets that turned the dirt trail to slick clay. Eli tugged his coat tighter, pulled the wagon beneath a cluster of cottonwoods, and covered Marla with the tarp before tying the horses off. Lightning lit the trees like bones. Thunder cracked so close it shook the wagon frame. Marla didn't flinch. She just sat there, knees to her chest, eyes following the flickers of light in the distance. Eli crouched near the fire, trying to keep it alive under his hat brim. His hands moved steady, but his shoulders were tight. Too tight, because for the past day and a half he'd felt something watching. It started as a shadow on the ridge. Then a faint smell of smoke that didn't come from their fire. Then silence, too much silence. No crickets, no night owls. Someone was out there. And whoever they were, they weren't in a hurry. He poured coffee into the tin mug, but didn't drink it. "Marla," he said without looking up. "You see anything on the ridge last night?" She nodded slowly. "1 horse, maybe 2. He exhaled. "Thought so." The next morning, the trail narrowed between boulders. The canyon pass. Dangerous terrain when you were alone, worse when you were being followed. Eli stepped down from the wagon and motioned for Marla to stay put. He pulled his rifle from beneath the bench, cocked it low, and scanned the ridgeline. Nothing. Still, the feeling lingered. By midday, they reached a fork in the trail. One path led east, toward the border towns and the mining camps. The other, west, toward Comanche country and the empty plains that stretched out like silence itself. Eli paused. The safe road was east. But Marla hadn't said it out loud, and she didn't need to. Her face shifted when they neared the fork. Not panic, not fear. Just something behind the eyes. Like the east meant chains again. The choice was his. Eli turned west. They didn't speak for hours. Then, as the sun dipped low behind the bluffs, a sound echoed behind them. Hoofbeats. 3, maybe 4. Coming fast. Eli pulled the wagon off the trail, behind a rise of stone, and grabbed his rifle. He didn't tell Marla to hide. She'd already crawled down behind the bench before he could speak. Dust curled over the ridge. Then the riders appeared. Not Comanche, not soldiers. White men. Civilian clothes. One carried a lasso. The man in front had a red scarf and a crooked jaw. His horse was black, tall, with eyes too alert to be wild. Eli recognized him instantly. Jack Brenner, the foreman who'd paid him. They hadn't expected Eli to come this way. They hadn't expected him to protect the girl. But now they were here. And they were smiling. "Danner!" Jack shouted across the trail. "Thought you'd be halfway to Arkansas by now. Then we hear you're dragging my girl out past the border. Figured we'd better come collect." Eli didn't answer. He didn't lower the rifle either. Another man stepped forward, younger, jittery. He pointed toward the wagon. "She's there, ain't she?" Jack laughed. "Ain't no use hiding her. We branded her for a reason. She's not a girl. She's property." Eli's finger tensed near the trigger. He didn't fire. Jack's horse shifted. "We ain't here to start a war, Danner. We just want what's ours." Eli finally spoke. "She's not yours." Jack leaned forward in the saddle. "You break a contract now? Man like you can't afford enemies, Danner. Especially not out here." Silence. Then Eli said it, soft, final. "I ain't carrying her to you." Jack's face twitched. The tension in the canyon thickened. Then, in the distance, another sound rose. Drums. Far off, steady, low. Not war drums. Not yet, but a warning. Jack turned his head, uneasy. "You think you'll outrun us by heading into Comanche land?" He spat in the dust. "They'll cut you up just the same. You think they'll thank you for stealing one of your own?" Eli didn't flinch. The drums grew louder. Closer now. Jack cursed, wheeled his horse. "We'll be back. You can't run forever." He rode off. The others followed. One glanced back at the wagon before disappearing over the ridge. When it was quiet again, Marla stepped down from behind the bench. She said nothing. Neither did Eli. But the drums kept beating. And now Eli knew what they meant. He hadn't just stolen a girl. He'd placed himself between her and every man who thought she belonged to them. And the world was coming for both of them. They made camp in silence. Marla helped gather dry grass. Her steps were careful, deliberate, like she was still learning how to move freely. The fire crackled low between them, but neither reached for food. Their eyes flicked to the shadows between trees, always listening. The drums had stopped at dusk, just as sudden as they'd started. But silence didn't mean safety. Not out here. Eli sharpened his knife with a slow drag of steel. He didn't look at Marla when he spoke. "They were following us since Pike's Hollow," he said. "Not just the foreman's men." She didn't ask who. Didn't need to. A gust of wind tugged at her hair. She pulled it back, revealing a thin scar behind her ear. Jagged, old. The kind that tells stories even when lips stay shut. "I was traded," she said. Her voice was even, but flat, like she was narrating someone else's life. "My ma died of fever. I was 10. A man from the camp said he'd take me to a school. Feed me. Make me decent." Her eyes didn't meet his. "That's not what he did." Eli didn't interrupt. "I tried to run twice. First time, I got caught before sundown. Second time, I got as far as the river. They branded me after that. The fire hissed. I stopped talking after. Easier that way. She looked up now. But you didn't look at me like I was trash. Eli didn't blink. You're not. Another silence passed. Then Marla leaned forward. Her eyes were darker than the firelight, but steady now. What happens when they catch us? She asked. They won't. But what if they do? Eli stared at the flames. Then I make sure they don't walk away. Marla didn't smile, but something shifted in her. Not hope, not trust exactly, but something soft enough to live inside silence. She looked to the ridge. They weren't Comanche, she said. The men today. No. But the drums were. Eli nodded. Will they help us? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Depends who's beating the drum. The next morning the wind changed. Carried smoke. Not fire smoke. Not brush or lightning-struck trees. No. This was cook-fire smoke. Meat and ash and cedar. Eli stopped the wagon at a rise and scanned the plains below. 3 riders were approaching, not fast, not hiding. Their paint was muted, more ash than war color. The man in front wore a band of hawk feathers braided through his hair. His chest was bare but adorned with a single string of bone beads. No rifle, no spear, just eyes. Sharp, patient. Eli stepped down from the wagon, unarmed. The lead rider halted 10 paces away. He spoke in Comanche, low, formal. Eli answered with equal weight, his accent careful. Marla watched from the wagon, motionless. The 2 men exchanged a long string of words, their voices never rising. Then silence. The Comanche rider looked past Eli, straight at Marla. He dismounted, walked halfway to the wagon, and stopped. She yours? He asked in English now. His voice was deep, cracked with sun and time. No, Eli said. But you carry her like she is. Eli didn't flinch. She was taken, hurt, used. The man nodded. Many are. He looked again at Marla, and this time, something in her shifted. She stood up slowly, climbed down from the wagon, and stepped forward. No one told her to. She looked at the man's eyes. I have no name, she said quietly. Not one that belongs to me. The man stepped closer. He raised a hand, slow, not to touch but to gesture, to offer space, not claim it. You will. He turned back to Eli. You were not supposed to bring her west. I know. But you did. Eli waited. The man tilted his head. The men who come for her. Do they come tonight? Eli shook his head. Soon. Not tonight. The Comanche man exhaled through his nose. Good. Then tonight. She sleeps among people who will not sell her. Marla's mouth parted, but she said nothing. The man turned to his riders and gave a sharp nod. They rode off, not away, but ahead, as if clearing a path. The man lingered. He looked once more at Marla, then at Eli, then said, Come, we ride with you now. That night, they camped in a hollow near a dry creek. 5 other riders had joined them by then, quiet men, all watching without staring. Marla sat between 2 elder women who didn't ask questions, only handed her warm food and a woven shawl. She said nothing, but she didn't flinch. She didn't fold up. She sat straight, watched the fire. And when one of the women reached forward to gently pull her braid behind her shoulder, she didn't move away. She let herself be touched. Eli watched from the other side of the fire, his hands still, his shoulders loose for the first time in days. And for the first time he believed they might make it. Dawn broke with gold spilling over the ridge, washing the camp in quiet light. Smoke from the dying fire drifted upward in soft curls. Birds called somewhere in the trees, and for once, Eli didn't reach for his rifle first. Marla was awake. She stood a little apart from the others, holding the shawl the women had given her. Her bare feet sunk into the dew-wet dirt. Her eyes were steady, not afraid, not waiting. When Eli walked over, she didn't flinch, didn't shrink. Where do we go now? She asked. Eli looked past her, toward the Comanche riders saddling their horses. Farther west, he said. A place they call Widow's Creek. Few people. No rail lines. Safer. Safe enough? She asked. No such thing. She nodded. They rode out before the sun was fully up. The Comanche men flanked the wagon without needing instruction. No loud words. No grand gestures. Just a quiet agreement. The girl was under protection now. For half the day, no one spoke. Then, around a bend of rock and cottonwood, a figure emerged on horseback, alone, dirty, leaning forward like the saddle hurt him. It was the young man from the foreman's group, the jittery one who hadn't said much before. This time, he was bleeding from his arm. He raised a hand weakly. I ain't here to fight, he called. The riders slowed. Eli raised a fist, the signal to halt. The boy looked rough. Black eye, torn shirt. They're coming, he said. 4 of 'em. Jack's madder than I've ever seen him. Eli dismounted. You switch sides? He asked. The boy shrugged. Didn't know we were chasing a girl who'd already been bought and sold twice over. Didn't know we were fixing to drag her back in a sack. He spit blood to the side. I didn't sign up for that. Eli studied him. You hurt bad. Just enough to slow him. You lead them here? The boy shook his head. Took a long path to throw him off. Maybe bought you a few hours. Maybe not. Marla stepped up beside Eli. Her face didn't show fear, just something colder. Resolved. She looked at the boy. Why help me? He looked at her like the question pained him. 'Cause I saw how they looked at you, he said. Like you was meat. Like you was theirs. And you're not. You're not anybody's but your own. No one spoke. Eli finally said, Go. Get out of this canyon and don't ride toward any town for a while. The boy nodded, turned his horse, and disappeared between the rocks. That night, the camp was quiet. No fire. No singing. Just darkness and breathing. Eli sat cross-legged, cleaning his rifle. Marla sat close, braiding strands of grass like she was weaving silence into something that could hold shape. Then, softly, she said, I remember my real name. Eli stopped moving. She didn't look up, just kept twisting the grass between her fingers. My mother used to hum it when I was half asleep. Mara. With no L. Just Mara. He waited. My ma said it meant bitterness in the old stories. But she said it with kindness. Said even bitter things bloom in the desert. She looked at him now. I want that name back. Eli nodded once. Then it's yours. A pause. Then she asked, Will you keep going with me? He looked into the fireless dark, at the line of sleeping bodies, at the horse that would be ready to ride by dawn. Yeah, he said. I'll keep going. Another silence settled between them. Not heavy, not fearful, just still. Then, from far off, a sound. The crack of brush under hoof. Low murmurs. Metal against leather. Marla stood. So did Eli. The riders woke with no one needing to be told. Rifles drawn. Bows unstrapped. Eyes toward the ridge. A figure stepped into view. Jack Brenner. Behind him, 3 more men. One with a torch. One with a rope. The torch lit Jack's face from below. He was grinning like someone who thought the ending was already written. Evenin', Danner, he called. Got a long ride ahead of you. Why don't you make it easier and hand her over? No one moved. You don't give her to me, Jack said, voice rising. We'll take her off your dead body. You hear me? Still no answer. Then a different sound. From the opposite ridge. Another group of riders. Dozens. More Comanche. More than anyone expected. Silent. Still. Ghost-like under the moon. They didn't raise weapons. They didn't shout. But the message was clear. This girl was not alone. And Jack Brenner was suddenly, terrifyingly outnumbered. He took a step back. Then another. He looked to the man beside him. Put the torch down, he muttered. The man did. They turned. Fled. Their horses scrambled over rock. And just like that, the danger passed. Mara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Eli stepped beside her. He didn't say, it's over. Because it wasn't. But tonight, for the first time, she hadn't needed saving. She'd been defended. And that was something else entirely.